Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing the A.R.T project from the op. The A.R.T project is a 1 to 6 player cooperative game, A.R.T standing for the A.R.T Rescue Team, in which players are abstractly trying to rescue A.R.T from people stealing A.R.T. The theme doesn't come across for me. The game is a different story, but the theme doesn't come across for me. But either way, this is a 1 to 6 player cooperative game. The general idea of the game is players are going to have 2 cards in their hand, and they're going to be playing one of these cards to be able to accomplish a mission. Now, the way these cards work over here is they're going to have a cost, they're going to have what agents, negative agents, are going to be placed on the board, and then what you're going to get out of it. Now, you're going to be going ahead and doing these without fully communicating to the other players exactly how these cards operate, but you can work with some degree of vagueness. So, it's a shame over here because we're out of fuel right now. We don't have any fuel in the car. If somebody had some fuel, I could go ahead and play this. Things like that can be said, but you can't say, this card will cost me 1 fuel, it'll put 2 agents there, and it's going to go ahead and give us this, this, and this. So you could be direct. You don't have to fully dance around the bush, but you can't spell out exactly what a card will do. Fortunately, I'll say, hey, by the way, guys, I need a fuel over here. This player will look at their hands, and unfortunately, they also require fuel, which means it looks like none of us are going to be able to accomplish those goals, but that's also where our hearts come into play. You see, we have hearts, which act as a kind of wild resource. Each player over here has 3 hearts right now. This is going to be one of the things that varies based on the difficulty level. The most basic difficulty has you starting with 4 hearts, and then you can work your way up to 3, 2, 1 hearts per player if you're really feeling like you're up for a challenge. So in my case, we don't really have the hearts we need. Let's see if we can do anything. They're all going to require whatever. I'm playing 2 hands right now because I'm trying to teach you the game. But I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? We're going to do this mission over here. We're going to pay a gun from our shared supply of resources. We're going to put an agent down in this particular city over here. And then we're going to generate a heart. So I'll go ahead and generate a heart for myself and a walkie-talkie on the board. There we go. That's a mission. And this will go into our played mission cards over here. We're going to leave that here because that symbol is going to be relevant for us later. Meanwhile, this player is going to go ahead and deal with the fact that there's no hearts, which means they have no fuel, which means they have a few options. You can always expend a heart to draw another mission card. Sometimes it's useful. In this case, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go ahead and go with, you know what? Let's go with this one over here. We're going to go ahead and pay a heart instead of fuel. Whenever you pay any resource at all, you can always give up a heart instead of a fuel. Hearts are kind of your catch-all resource that will help you out of tight spots. We're going to discard this card over here, and this card is going to be played, adding 1 agent to, again, that city, and adding a gun and a walkie-talkie to our board. There we go. We played this mission. It's going to go down there. This player will discard their other mission, and then we go to the move phase. So we've both basically had a hand of 2 cards. We played a mission, and now we're going to go ahead and go to the move phase, where we're going to have the opportunity to move around the board. This is where there are 6 boards in the game. There's 6 different maps, each with small rules variations. I specifically am not on the most starter map. I figure if you've watched a whole bunch of other reviews, you've seen the starter map. This over here is Egypt, the second map they recommend, and this one is going to have you being able to travel up the Nile for free, but you only pay to come back down. So you can go as far as you want freely without having to worry about any restrictions, but you do have to be mindful that as the game progresses, you're going to need to come back down, and paying fuel for that, because you pay 1 fuel per movement, that's going to be the tricky part. Now we start with no fuel. We start with no fuel over here, which means we only have the option of going up. I think in this case, we're going to go ahead and we'll stay together. We'll stay together right now. We won't move at all, which means what we will do right now is we're going to each roll our dice over here. Whenever you have enemy people in your spot, you roll your dice. If you're together, you roll these. If you have any extra agents over here, you roll those. These will cost walkie-talkies either 6, 5, 4, 5, 5, well, 6, 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, depending on how much art you've rescued. These crates over here are going to represent the hearts that you've rescued, which you'll see more about shortly. But first, let's go ahead and roll our dice. We got a 3 and a 6, which is higher than 2 plus 6. In other words, our 9 beats that 8, which means these are going to go back to the supply. Had we not achieved that, you can discard guns to add 2 to your roll per gun. You could also discard hearts to count as guns, and you could even discard these clues to be able to re-roll dice, rolling 1 die for every single symbol you've discarded. That's going to be round 1. We're done with round 1. Let's go ahead to round 2 and see how this plays out. We're going to go ahead and grab more cards, 2 cards per player over here, and once again, we'll look at the board and see what we can do. Right now, I'd love to get some fuel on the board, but I'm mindful that I'll be adding 2 agents over here. That's not the worst right now. You know what? If I do this and hope that they do that, maybe we'll even get a crate on the board. So I think I will go ahead and do this. I'll pay a heart. I'll discard this card. I'll go ahead and add 2 more agents to the spot we just vacated over here. And this time around, I'll add 2 fuel, so we'll have some possibility of utilizing that as we need. I'm hoping that this player will be able to do that. Let's pretend we communicated. Look at that. We can do so. We're going to pay nothing. We're going to add 1 to each of these 2 spots. So 1 to the music spot. That's going to be dangerous, but I'll let that happen, even though it's inefficient, just to show you how some things work. And then we'll add a resource, and a resource to the pool. There we go. We've added some options. We have some flexibility. Let's try to be... I'm debating between the merits of being adventurous versus showing you how things work. But I'll show you how things work, and I'll actually be a little inefficient while doing so, just so you can see how things play out. Now, right over here, we have 3 of the same symbol. 1, 2, 3. As soon as that happens, we discard those cards, and only those cards, and we put a crate from the supply onto the city matching the symbol, which is over here. The problem is we can't rescue that because there are enemy agents in the spot. Or at least we can't rescue that generally. Now what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and be rolling against this 6 plus the 2, so again 8. But this time around I'm going to give up 5 walkie-talkies. Should I give up 5? We'll give up 5 walkie-talkies and 1 heart for a total of 6 walkie-talkies, and we'll add 1 of these to our pool. This will stay in our pool permanently. We've strengthened up, which is helpful, because now we're rolling 3 dice. We're going to choose not to move again. We're going to roll 3 dice, and we got 3, 5, and 6, which very strongly beats that. We got 1 of the crates. We need to get this many crates over here, 7 crates total, but this is going to go here, which has the effect of reducing the cost of more of these dice, now down to 5, then 4, then 3, but also has the cost of increasing the default strength of the enemy. Now the enemy strength is 8 plus however many agents are there. That's all fine and dandy. The problem is we just had a bad thing happen, which I knew would happen. It's very bad to happen this early in the game, but I am showing you how things play out, which is we now have 5 agents. I don't think I put one down. There's supposed to be another agent over here. There's supposed to be an agent over here. We now have 5 agents in this spot over here. Whenever you have 5 enemy agents in a spot, you're going to remove those, and you're going to mark the city as lost, which is going to get in the way, and it's going to have the effect of whenever agents are spawned in this city, they're going to go here where they become a permanent effect against us whenever we have fights against, any agents will be there. And it's going to be harder to get crates there, because crates can't spawn there anyway. Basically, you want to be very mindful of how frequently cities can be lost, because that's going to be one of the endgame triggers, or one of the ways you lose, I should say. You can lose the game in a few ways. First of all, if any agent ever fully runs out of health, you lose. You also lose if you have to put down a lost city and there are no more lost city tokens. And finally, you lose if this deck over here, towards the bottom of the deck over here, you're going to have this. Once you get to this card over here, if you aren't done by the end of that round, you will also lose. As far as how you win, the only way you win is by gathering 7 crates. So once you have all 7 crates over here, that's when you'll finally win the game. This particular map has a crate on the board pre-printed, but that's going to be all the way up here, which you have to make your way up there to get. That's pretty much just going on in the art project. You're going to be drawing cards, communicating with each other a little bit vaguely as you try to expend resources to be able to gather what you need to be able to accomplish a mission every single round. The missions are going to put down enemy agents on the board, which is not great, but they're also going to give you resources, which is great, and they're also going to give you the symbols you need, those clues to be able to track down the art that you need in order to be able to ultimately get all these crates, although you have to realize that towards the end, the enemy agents are going to have a default strength of 25, plus however many are in the zone, which is a big deal. And that's basically how you play the art project. You're going to be 6 different maps, each with small rules variations and the visual layouts and rules variations to them. But past that, that is how you play the art project, a 1 to 6 player cooperative game of trying to rescue these crates of art while trying to ensure that you stay more powerful and 1 step ahead of the enemies at all time. Which brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. Rulebook is very easy to dive into. It's like, half the rulebook is literally explaining each of the different maps that you have, but it's a few pages of just going through how the actual sequence and turn order operates. Very easy to teach, to play, to get into. There's a small degree of some degree of small confusion and explanation as you deal with the hidden information aspect of any cooperative game. Like, hey, you can communicate this, not so much that. So you have to work with other players on that, but ultimately an easy game to teach and get running. And I'd say the game generally lasts between 30 to 45 minutes generally. You could have slower games for sure, depending on player count. I'd say that once you have people who are up and running, if you're playing 2 to 3 players who know what's going on, you're looking at the 30 minutes on the fast end and 45 on the slightly longer end. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is the game is hard. Like, surprisingly hard. Like, this is from the off, who generally does family-friendly games, and there's definitely difficulty scaling at play here, make no mistake. So there is difficulty scaling, but even the most basic difficulty is still a challenge. You have to work your way through it, and as you start ramping up to the slightly harder difficulties, you have very little leeway when you don't start the game with a lot of hearts. And so you want to be really mindful as far as the amount of hearts you have in play, the difficulty you're playing at, and the economy of your actions. This is not an easy game. This is a game where you have to sit there and prioritize exactly which missions you play. When do you draw into another mission? Where and what do you do on this board? How do you take advantage of each individual map? How do you power these guys up as fast as possible, but not necessarily spending spending too many resources. If you're able to survive a few rounds without them, then you can get these guys even cheaper, and every single resource in this game is tight. The game is hard, and I like that, and I also like the difficulty scaling. The base level starts out as hard, and then as you start making it harder, and as you start to get a little bit more efficient in the game, like I recommend you, every time you win, you reduce your hearts, and then just go from there. I could recommend you try that, because you'll find yourself constantly pushed against the wall as far as you get a little better at finding exactly how to press the system, but then you also have just a few less hearts to be able to compensate and balance around that. This is a tight game, which cooperative games are always a delicate balance. You don't want them to feel too easy, and my concern with this was going to feel too much like a walk in the park, and it does not feel like that at all, which I really enjoy. There's also a good escalation of you getting stronger, as do the enemies. These dice are my bread and butter. I love rolling these extra dice. It gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility, because splitting your agents up really is an important thing in the game, because it gives you the ability, the room, to be able to deal with groups of agents without having to stay in the same spot, without having to pay fuel every time you move as a collective or group, because every agent costs fuel to move, and if you're moving 3 or 4 agents as a group, it just costs you a lot more. Getting these as your backup system are key to be able to have the agency you need to be able to wander around the board and properly keep down the threats, because if you're not careful, you're not going to have a lot of options. As this board fills up with agents that you're not dealing with, it means you're going to have an overrun board and more lost cities, so to be mindful of that. And then the problem is, as you gather crates and as you start winning, the enemy agents are powering up as well, and it's a good solid tempo as far as just the game. Just like you're like, okay, great, a little easy, a little fine, a little stronger, a little careful, I'm going to start losing some battles. And you do have tools at your disposal to be able to deal with losing fights. First of all, you can just lose a fight and lose a heart. Not great, I don't recommend it, but you can do that. But you can spend that heart to be able to add to your scores, count it as a gun, add to your values, spend your clues if you need to re-roll. Everything in this game is a precious resource that you have to decide very carefully when and where you're willing to expend it, but it is a factor as far as the tools at your disposal in the game. I like the fact that there's different maps in the game. The basic map as is fine. I like it, but I am someone who likes variability in my games. I am someone who likes to be able to say I'm diving into games from the same rule set but from different approaches, and the fact that there are 6 maps in the game over here just means there's a lot of small nuanced differences. I mean, you think of games like Ticket to Ride, and you have entire new boxes for every single unique map, and this, each map does feel marginally different. Not a major difference, not by a long shot, you're not expecting anything game changing, but you have 6 different small rules adjustments or tweaks to how you're experiencing the art project, and the fact that you get all that in one box is incredible. It's just incredible sense of value for the cooperative gameplay. 6 different maps in a single box. I very strongly approve of that, and that's aside from the production, which is the general art of incentive trait, the consolidated box size, lots of good things going on here, combined with the fact that it's a fast-moving game. This gives you a fast, punchy, difficult game with variability, all in that 30 to 45 minute zone, which is very solid for what it's doing over here. As far as what I don't like in the game, biggest thing I don't like is that medium communication gimmick. I am never a fan of games where it's like, hey, you can say this, but not that. You can say I need fuel, but you can't say to what extent. You can't say that you're putting down 2 agents in the city, but you could say that's not a good idea to do that. You're dealing with a game where you're not dealing with perfect communication, sure. But the little puzzle and game of what are you allowed to say and what are you not allowed to say, I never like that in games. It just feels fiddly, and it kind of feels fiddly here. I find that I usually just let the tempo go where the tempo goes. If players are communicating a bit more, that's fine. If you're playing with younger players, for sure be willing to share cards and things like that. But ultimately, I don't mind no communication. I don't mind completely open communication. I never love when they're like, hey, let's just talk to each other vaguely and see how that plays out. You could argue it's thematic, because in real life, you're not like, hey, by the way, I'll shoot the bullet, and the end result is I'm going to get, 2 crates of fuel. Real life is like, hey, you take that guy, I'll take this guy. I mean, real life is a stretch. I'm not fighting any agents, if you know what I mean. But the idea that it mimics a real life planning without real life perfect accountability, I get that. But the practical reality is I'm looking at real life decisions in my hand, and I'm not able to fully communicate, but I am allowed to partially and vaguely communicate. I just don't love that. I'll also say that the tempo of the game is similar game to game. I like the puzzle, I like the pushing yourself, I like the action economy, I like the variability that the maps give me, I like the difficulty scaling, lots of things I like, but ultimately I can't deny the fact that game to game, it doesn't feel significantly different the way I approach it. I'm approaching each game in the same manner. It's ultimately about the same mental puzzle of exactly how I'm trying to be efficient. I don't think my thought process changes significantly game to game. The maps, though, do give me that slight illusion of differences, so I feel like I'm playing a marginally different game, even though I'm approaching it the same way. But definitely the tempo is very similar. I think that there are many cooperative games that I'm trying to do different things in the ways I approach the puzzle based on how the board evolves. So far, this one kind of feels like I'm, again, still a strategic game, but I kind of am approaching it the same way every single game. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, the hearts as a kind of catch-all to everything. It might be frustrating. You're like, hey, by the way, we're out of X. Well, we have hearts, so we can spend hearts. We're out of this, we can spend hearts. We need to draw a card, we can spend hearts. Hearts are a catch-all, and that might not feel fun for you. I like the flexibility it gives you while also keeping a key currency as an indicator. It also forces you into trade-offs. You can spend hearts early game to give yourself freedom, but if you don't have those hearts when the hard decisions come, it will come back to bite you. And so I like that aspect, but you may not. I'll also say that the end game can certainly come down to the luck of the draw, specifically because of how tight the economy of the game can be if you're pushing yourself on the difficulty level. You can have games which come down to the fact that you're in your last round, you're doing what you need to do, and you have one spot you need to get to in order to win, and then you draw 2 missions, and you're like, oh, look at that, we don't have any guns. Well, this would actually work for us. We don't have any guns over here, and so, you know, we just can't do it. I'm down to my last heart. Sometimes you can come down to the luck of the draw on those last missions, depending on the currencies you have, and the fact that you're down to your last hearts, so it can be, like throughout the rest of the game, luck won't hurt you because you can spend your hearts to account for it. In the end game and the final decisions, when you have no flexibility left because you've burnt yourself to where it is, sometimes it comes down to that chance of, hey, we could have drawn those cards and it worked, but we drew these cards and so it didn't work and we lost instead. That could come down to the luck of the draw at the end of it. I'll also say that the game is subject to alpha playering. Despite the hidden communication, and by the way, that might be part of the point of the hidden communication, might be to limit the alpha playering, and if you're not familiar, alpha playering is the idea that a single player at the table will take a little bit too much control, being like, you do this, you do that, I'll go here, we'll play these cards in those order. You might have someone who's trying to run the game, as opposed to letting everyone play the game. And this game is subject to that. Yes, there's hidden communication, but at the same time, there's the ease of being able to communicate subtly what's on your card does mean you could have a player who's trying to be like, uh-oh, we're gonna lose, so somebody has to do this thing over here, and somebody has to go there, and if we do that, we win. You can certainly have a player taking control of the table. I think that's often a group problem as opposed to a game problem, but this is a game that does enable that group problem. So take that into account if you are strong alpha players, so if you have that issue with your group, I think this game might be a problem for that. As far as final thoughts on the ART project, I like this game. More than I thought I would at first. I mean, I played the game and I enjoyed it, and then I played it more and I enjoyed it more, and I played it more and I kept enjoying it more. I find games are always fascinating in the sense that, I mean, I play a lot of games. I'm exposed to a lot of different board games, and a thing that's very common for me is that if the decision space is a little bit more limited, I find I'll play a game, and then I'll start getting bored of it pretty quickly. I'll be like, hey, this is fun, I've enjoyed it, but that's game 1. Now game 2 is a little less, and game 3 is like, good, I've seen enough, I'll move on. I like being able to taste and try different games, but ultimately the ones that I keep and the ones that I hold on to are usually meteor experiences or party experiences, usually not in the weight class that the ART project is. To me, the ART project is a game that, if I'm looking at it purely based on the decisions, this is a good game, and I'm ready to move on from it. But I'm not. I like it. I'm charmed by it. I don't have a good answer for exactly what it is. I feel like this game should rank a little lower, and yet I'm still having a lot of fun with it, even though it is following that similar tempo game to game. And I do think the map variability helps. You can play this game 6 times and never be playing the exact same game. But when you play it 12 times, you've only played each map twice. There's a lot built into that, and so I think that definitely does help. But ultimately, the fact that it's challenging, the fact that it's hard, the fact that it's short, all those things combine to me that this is a game that started off good with the expectation for me that it would go down as I played more, and it only went up as I played more, which was a pleasant surprise. To me, this is a 4 out of 5. I enjoy this one a lot. It is a little bit on the lighter side, not in the difficulty, but in the amount of decision space you have as far as the different things you can do. There's a fairly clear path of optimization as far as how you approach it, but ultimately, I like it, and I'm rewarded by it, and the variability of the maps, as well as the general difficulty scaling of it, do keep me invested in this game. So the ART project from the op, a 4 out of 5. As far as other game recommendations, specifically I try to focus on game recommendations that do deal with that hidden communication in ways that I think are well done, that kind of restrict how much information you can convey, but in far more satisfying and rewarding puzzles, both of these in cooperative games. There's Paleo, which I highly recommend you check out. Very fascinating game of emergent storytelling as you try to keep your tribes alive and try not to die from all the various threats facing you. And then there's Shipwreck Arcana, which is a totally abstract theme, but ultimately comes down to trying to be able to work with other players as far as being able to predict what tiles players have in their hands through a degree of trying to predict and put yourself in the other player's shoes and mirror their choices. Very fascinating puzzle, very different. Both of those, I think, do deal with the hidden communication in ways that I think are more interesting or nuanced and don't come down to just like, ultimately being able to say what you want, just slightly more vaguely. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.